I wanted to work with my childhood idol. It was like sort of like a reach, but I wanted to extend out and reach out to Stewart Copeland and ask him, like, to join me on this particular album. For my kind of music, it's quality over quantity, and it's always a struggle to find that population that likes my music because of the AM PM difference between Los Angeles and India. I started syncing slowly. I started syncing my sleep timings with Stewart so that there would be easier feedback.
My first question will be about the album. How did Divine Tide start? Like, where did the idea come from?
So in 2015, after I'd won the Grammy Award, for the last few years, for the last 7 years, not 6 years actually, until last year, that I was, I've always been wanting to create a follow-up to the album. But then, of course, the pandemic hit, and we all were forced to stay indoors, and that presented itself as an opportunity for me to actually create an album. So I started working on some music, and I really felt that I wanted to work with my childhood idol. It was like sort of like a reach, but I wanted to extend out and reach out to Stewart Copeland and ask him, like, to join me on this particular album. So I managed to get in touch with him and sent him some of the music, and then we got on a phone call. He told me that he loved the music, and we decided to co-write the album together and create the album together, and that is what Divine Tides is all about. So it took us about a year to finish off the album, and and it has been a great experience.
How did this album come together during the pandemic?
When it comes to working remotely, with musicians, that's something that we've been used to doing that for a very long time now, not just during the pandemic. We've been doing that for the last 7 or 8 years, in fact, because most musicians know how to record themselves. They've got recording setups in their own residences and things like that. It's just that during the pandemic, we did not have a choice. If I wanted to go to Los Angeles and record with Stewart, I could not, because we did not have a choice. So what we would do is that I would record in Bangalore at my studio. Stewart has got an amazing studio called the Sacred Grove in Los Angeles. He would record over there. And then also, because of the AM PM difference between Los Angeles and India, I started syncing slowly. I started syncing my sleep timings with Stewart so that there would be easier feedback. There would be an easier feedback mechanism, and I could get back to his questions or his suggestions really quickly, while he's awake. So that's pretty much how we did, and like hundreds of phone calls, Zoom calls, emails, WhatsApps, and all of that stuff. That happened, and I'd never met Stewart in person. So the very first time, so we did this album for about a year. We interact with each other with hundreds of these communications and remote recordings, and we got nominated for a Grammy, and I'd never met him in person. And so that's pretty much a testimony to what the pandemic was all about. The first time I ever met him was just a week back. In Nashville, I met him. So we spent some quality time together over there. Then after that, we spent some time in Los Angeles. Then we spent some time in Vegas. So from not meeting him for a year, I hung around with him in 3 cities. So that was pretty cool.
I also wanted to ask that in this album, and even in your music in general, nature is a very recurring theme, and you've also been a very vocal advocate for the environment. So how do you bring your love for nature and music together?
The only kind of music that I make is music that I feel like making, in the sense that I do not do commercial music, I do not do film music. So all of my music is an extension of my own philosophies, my own thoughts, my own ideas, things that I feel strongly about. And and I feel very strongly about the environment. So a lot of my music is celebrating nature, and sometimes the music is all about is also about creating awareness on various issues. In the case of Divine Tides, everything was a celebration. Celebrating the Himalayas, celebrating biodiversity, celebrating rainforests, that kind of stuff. I would say that there are always 2 ways to go about a message in terms of advocacy or activism or whatever. One is, of course, shaming people into action, which is quite effective in some ways, but that's not a path that I've chosen to take. I've chosen to use positive reinforcement and and showcase love, like what I call the David Attenborough approach, that that make everyone fall in love with the natural world, and hopefully through that love people will find it within themselves to protect, to conserve, and to sustain.
I also noticed that Indian culture in general seeps into your music a lot. So, did you grow up with some cultural and musical influences in your life?
Not really, actually, but I've always been a musician my whole life.
Hmm.
So I actually grew up in America for the first 8 years of my life. I was in North Carolina, and we lived in a uh, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. In this like a lot of wooded areas around our house. So there would be a lot of creepy crawly animals that would enter our home, and I was very fascinated by them always. Even though I was always asked to run away from them as soon as I see them, or if it's an insect, to step on them and kill them. And and I used to always wonder that that if you're just supposed to kill these animals as soon as we see them, then why do they exist? They obviously have some sort of purpose. These were the things that used to trouble me as a child, and now I understand these things. And if you look at music itself, music started off as sounds from nature. That's
Mhm.
how music was pretty much invented. That sounds of the birds, sounds of the animals, sounds of the stream, sounds of the water drops, the wind, and then slowly humans started imitating the sounds. And it's only for the last maybe 1,000 years that music has actually become academic with notes and scales and rags. But if you look at indigenous tribes all over the world, and indigenous populations, for them music is still the same as nature. There's no difference between music and nature.